Best of the Week, guys. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we have Michael Lawman Guitars, out of West Des Moines, Iowa. Me personally, he's the gold standard of guitar demo videos, and you're part of the reason why I have such a love for Harmony guitars. Your website says you only sell cool stuff, and your website proves it, man. You've got a great website, www.lawmanguitars.com. You've been a hero in this community forever. I'd like to hear a little bit more about you.
That's cool. Hey, I appreciate you asking to hear from Lawman Guitars today.
Yeah.
We've been doing it a long time. I've been playing guitar since I was 10, which was a really, really long time ago.
Yeah.
And started out back in the day playing harmonies and silver tones and Ks and all those, and just kind of grew up with them. And when I started getting into guitars again, it was like, what do you go to? You go to the guitars that you know.
Yeah.
So that's what I started doing. I was probably one of the first eBay sellers of guitars. Someone said, hey, you ought to get a personal computer and buy stuff. And I went, oh, okay, what do you buy? And they go, well, I don't know. What do you like?
Yeah.
Why don't you look up some guitars? So I started buying and selling guitars on eBay years ago. And, probably did that for, 10 years or so in Chicago before I moved to Des Moines. And, if I had to stay with eBay, I probably would have gotten out of the business. But thanks goodness, Reverb came along, and Reverb.com is a great source for guys like me to move guitars and get them in the hands of buyers. And, of course, my website has done really well.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so it's been a blast. I got the greatest job in the world. I get to buy and sell and check out really cool guitars every day. And what better job is that for a guitar guy?
Yeah, you are absolutely an inspiration, man. Really, I mean that.
So I'm curious. Lawman Guitars, I think I can put two and two together, but how did that name come about?
Well, a lot of people will say, hey, Lawman, are you in law enforcement? The answer is no. Are you an attorney? And the answer is no. Just so happens my last name is Law. I'm Mike Law. And it came about very simply. My golfing buddies started calling me Lawman years ago. And when I had to come up with a name for guitars, it's like, let's see, what's a good name? Mike's Guitars? And that's so cool. Lawman, now there's a good name. So we became Lawman Guitars.
There you go. And, going back, so you said you kind of started out playing, K's, harmonies, silver tones, those kind of things. Do you remember what was your first guitar?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My first guitar, I think I bought out of the back of a comic book when I was about 9 years old. And I decided I needed to get some guitar lessons, so Mom and Dad hauled me down to the local guitar shop in Bellevue, Nebraska, the famous Bellevue House of Music. And I wandered in with this little toy guitar, and my guitar instructor kind of looked at that, and he goes, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think we can even tune this guitar. So he hauled me up to my dad's shoe store, and my dad bought me a K guitar that my guitar instructor said I needed, and it was terrible. I don't know how anybody learned to play on those old guitars back then. Your fingers were bloody after 10 minutes of trying to play a chord on them.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow I survived, and so I started out on an old K flat top, and that was my very first guitar.
That's
very
awesome.
Nice. And how did things progress from there? What a lot of times K's are looked at as sort of the entry level. What was your first real guitar, your first adult guitar, if you will?
Well, after I got through the initial shock of trying to play, like all guitar players, I started looking around and seeing what else is available. Mm-hmm. And my very first real guitar was a 1960-something National Studio 66, which was a very unusual guitar. It was made of Reso glass, for those of you who know National guitars.
Yep.
And very cool guitar. And matter of fact, that was the very first guitar I went and looked for when I was telling you the story about eBay. I said, all right, let me think, what would be something cool to find? And I said, well, hey, let me look for guitars, So, of course, a billion guitars came up on eBay, and I go, I better narrow down my search a little bit. So I put, electric guitars. Well, it cut it down to 500 million guitars.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, I can do better than that. Maybe I should put in national. Well, sure enough, here comes the guitar. I grabbed my wife. I go, hey, Judy, come look at this thing. I mean, there's the guitar, my very first guitar. She goes, how do you know that's your first guitar? And I go, well, it's not my first guitar, but it's one just like it.
Right.
So she goes, oh, that's cool. So I thought, well, all right, maybe I'll bid on this thing. So I bid on the guitar, and, eventually I got it. So here comes this national guitar like I had when I was a kid. Well, this is really cool. I cleaned it up and put strings on it and played it a little bit, and sat there in the living room and looked at it. My wife goes, so what are you going to do now with it, Mike? I go, it's not as cool as I really remember it being, and maybe I'll resell it. So I put it on eBay and resold it, made some money, and, that became Lawman Guitars.
Yeah, you got the bug after that. Yeah, of course. Hey, I got a question. It's Craigslist related, right? What's your best score on Craigslist? My
best score on Craigslist?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know that I've ever bought a guitar on Craigslist. Craigslist has not been one of my go-to places for guitars, I have to say.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, my finders probably use Craigslist a lot.
Yeah.
It's just not one of the things that I've done. I got lots of finders that I use across the country that come up with guitars for me.
Oh, awesome.
But and I'll buy guitars on eBay. I'll buy guitars on Reverb.
Yeah.
I have some chops that I use, but probably at least 60 to 70% of my guitars come from people who find them specifically looking for guitars for me.
Yeah.
So that's
awesome.
where my guitars come from.
Yeah, really, really cool.
And so you have demoed on YouTube. I mean, it's got to be hundreds, if not thousands, of guitars at this point. Looking back at your videos. Is there anything that you learned, anything that surprised you, demoing that many guitars? Is there anything that really stood out, or, anything you've learned from playing that many different instruments and really digging into them the way you do?
Well, it's interesting. I always come away from it saying, I'm not asking enough for this guitar. It's really fun when you, I've had great studios. I'm on my second studio now. I'm using Golden Bear Studios, if I can give a shout out. Golden Bear Records here in Des Moines, Iowa. Brian Vanderpool is doing my producing of my demos now, and he does just a great job.
Yeah.
But what happens is when you take them out of your shop and you put them into a studio environment where they've got all the great lights and they got all the great sound and they got the studio speakers going, so you hear it and you go, man, I'm just not asking enough for this guitar. This thing looks and sounds unbelievable.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, everybody else sees that too, and it's just a great way for people to see a guitar. I mean, let's face it, today, I have to say, through all this terrible situation we've been going through, has been very good for online businesses. People are buying guitars in great numbers because, they're not going out to dinner, they're not going to movies, they're not going places. They're saying, gee, maybe I should buy another guitar. And so it's been very good for the guitar business overall, not just Lawman, but been talking to a lot of shops. They've been experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about what I do and how I decided I wanted to sell guitars is I want the experience to be as if I'm selling you a guitar right here. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to a camera, but I'm speaking to someone individually who is considering this guitar that I'm playing. So I don't put effects on them. I play them very clean so that they can actually hear pickups and hear the sound of the guitar through an amp that only has a little bit of reverb on it. I mean, everyone always says, hey, Lawman, your guitars sound great. What kind of amp are you? It must be some special tube amp. Well, I'm using an old 90s transistorized Fender amp that I've had around forever.
Yeah. And
except for a little bit of reverb, that's all that's on it. So I hear all the time, it's great. I hear lots of guitar demos, but at least yours, I can understand how the guitar sounds as opposed to how the overdrive pedal sounds or how that amp sounded or how this pedal worked or that pedal worked. I don't use any pedals.
Yeah.
I play the guitar and try to give people an experience as if they were sitting across from me in my studio. Here's this guitar. Here's how it plays. Here's how it sounds. Here's what it does. See how nice and easily it plays. Here's things that are wrong with it. Here's what's great about it. This is that's how I sell guitars. I just I talk to a camera as if I'm speaking to you, Steven, or you, Matt.
Yeah. That's
Very nice.
awesome. Yeah, you have wonderful videos, man. Super in depth,
Thank you.
and yeah,
Thank
they're produced completely professionally. So, yeah, you do a great
Well, they
job.
should be. They cost me a lot of money.
Through all those demos, are there any standout guitars that you think back and just really you connected with?
Well, I could go through a lot of guitars. I mean, again, the older ones are what really do it for me. I mean, 90% of my guitars are vintage guitars, which, what's vintage today? I mean, when you think about vintage, I think of 60s and 70s and 50s and that golden era of guitars. But, even when you talk about guitars from the 90s today, I mean, they're 30 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to think of a vintage guitar as being it from the 90s, but I mean, let's face it, in the 80s, the 50s guitars were vintage, so I mean, it's all relative, and in my own perception, I have to kind of start thinking a little bit differently about the age of guitars. And guys that I'm selling guitars to, I mean, I'm happy to say they're not all guys my age.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that are buying my guitars, a lot of them are more your age now, which I'm happy to see. I mean, you guys have finally figured out that, all these other guitars are selling are trying to sound like the guitars I'm selling.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to be like my vintage guitars. Why don't you just buy a vintage guitar?
Yeah.
Then you'll never lose any money.
There you go.
I mean, that's what I tell everybody too. Is that, I mean, it's like buying used cars. I mean, it's like you can buy a brand new car, and how much is it worth as soon as you drive it off the lot?
Yeah.
It takes a while to get your money back out of a car. Same thing with guitars. I mean, you buy these vintage guitars, and you're putting your money into an investment that is going to sit there, and as long as the world doesn't end, they become more and more valuable every year that you go. So, I've done very well with vintage guitars just through no brain of my own. I just happen to fall into it. But here I am. You go from 2 or 3 guitars to how many do I have sitting around me today?
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Any guitars through that you wish you didn't get rid of?
well, I have to be very careful that I don't fall in love with my inventory. It's very easy to do.
Mhm.
Someone asked me the other day, they said, so, Lawman, how many guitars do you actually own? Which guitars are in your inner sanctum that you just put aside that you're not going to sell? So I thought, well, that's probably a pretty good question. So I started dragging them out from the closets and behind staircases, and I laid them all out on the floor out here, and I started counting. I go, 33 guitars. That's how many I had that I said I wasn't going to sell. I said, all right, at my age, how many of those guitars am I going to play every day? Probably 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
So, I mean, I started saying, all right, well, this one needs to go, this one needs to go, this one needs to go. I mean, I've been putting aside guitars that are just extremely cool, and guitars that I considered were my guitars, and when I'll demo them, that's how they'll be marketed. This was a guitar that I really thought I was going to keep. I decided I wasn't going to get to play it. I want to get it in the hands of somebody who will love it like I do, but be able to play it, that they don't have 33 guitars maybe.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's-
Steve,
Yes, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, that's a lot. We're getting up there. My personal collection isn't 33, but I mean it's pushing double digits, and it's like you forget about one of them that's been in the closet for 2 months. You're like,
You're
oh, I
just
haven't played that
getting
forever.
You're just getting started, man.
Yeah,
Come on, you gotta
I
have
know,
more
I know. I've been moving and selling them for a while too. So what are you gonna do?
So, hey, have I sold either of you guys a guitar?
I don't think I've ever bought a guitar from you. No.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
But, I've got my eye on some of your inventory. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's good to hear. Let me know. We'll make a deal.
Yeah.
Sounds
You're the
good,
guy
man.
I'll go to when I need to buy a high quality harmony that I'm not worried about buying it off Reverb. You know what I mean? That's when I'll buy from you.
I mean, what I tell everybody too. I mean, these vintage guitars. They. You see them a lot, and I'm constantly mining internets and sites for these guitars too. just like everybody else is. And, the ones I'm looking for are the ones that have the wrong parts on them or may have been abused somewhere. I mean, we have great techs here in Des Moines. I tell everybody I'm a real good cleaner of guitars. I'll get the strings off and I'll detail the guitars. But the other thing that I do is I get all the right parts together. So, you get guitars that have the wrong pickups. I'll have pickups for them, and it might have the wrong tuners. I'll have the right tuners for them. You should see my basement where I keep all my guitar cases. I've got probably, I know I have more guitar cases than I have guitars. I store up cases for specific guitars that I know are going to come in with the wrong case.
Yeah.
Something that we always try to do is make sure we match up the right case with the right guitar. And we've always felt that there was value added to have, the case might be worth this much and the guitar might be this much, but you put those two together and they're going to be worth a lot more because now you've got original case with the guitar. And that's something that can carry on as a legacy.
Of course.
So we're very passionate about having all the right parts and all the right cases, if at all possible, on these guitars. And if I don't have that, you hear about it when I do a demo and explain why and what you need to do to go find the right case. So they're not easy. They're not easy to find. Let me tell you.
Definitely not.
I know. I have struggles myself. So you do some recording yourself, if I'm seeing that correctly. Is that right?
Well, nice of you to say that. It's been a while since I've done that. I mean, coincidentally, thank you for bringing that up. Tomorrow I go into the studio and do my second record.
Hey.
The first one was all original songs that I had done. I'm a worship pastor at our church here in town, and so. We recorded a bunch of songs that I had written with some other people, and we recorded that. I think now it's probably close to 10 years ago, so I figured it was time to get back in the studio again. So tomorrow I've got a week of Golden Bear Records recording that I'm going to sit down and do all my favorite songs from church and one original that it's called Wise Up, Rise Up that was on my first record, but I didn't really like how it turned out. So we're going to do it again and do it the way I think it should have been done now. So I'll be getting my next record out here in the next month or so. Thanks for asking.
Hey, not a problem. I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about that as well.
Thank you.
So at the end of these interviews, we do a little thing where I, give you a couple of choices. You know what I mean? I might say Fender or Gibson, and you tell me which one, just so we can kind of get to know you a little bit better. So we got a couple of those we're going to go through if you're okay with that.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I'm ready.
Strat or Telecaster?
Strat, only because one of my only guitars that I've kept from the time that I was a young man is an old Strat that I've managed to hang on to through the years.
Fantastic. I'm a Strat guy myself, so. D18 or J45?
I actually own them both. I guess it kind of depends on what I'm doing. The D18 is probably a guitar that's been on more records and albums than any guitar out there. And if I was going to play a Martin, I would probably play that one, but only for that reason. It's got a very distinctive sound.
They certainly do. Would you go for a twin reverb or a deluxe reverb?
Deluxe because they're not as heavy.
There you go.
I'm an old man. The twins are just way too heavy for me to pick up.
There you go. Humbuckers or P90s?
Well, I love them both. Being old school as I am, P90s are actually ones that I like. Although, it was interesting. I had my Epiphone that has P90s in it out, and then I had my 335 with humbuckers, and I was playing it through my Deluxe, which I'm going to use in my record next week. I've got an old Tweed Deluxe that I recorded my last one with, but was that with my Champ? Anyway, I was playing it, and I'm going, these P90s are really hard to control in this amp. I think I might go with my humbuckers. They're just they're a little more tame for what we're going to be doing. So For recording, I would say I would use humbuckers. If I was playing live, stand back. I'll rock these P90s.
There you go. Some of these are based on some of your current inventory. So for hollow bodies, would you choose a Gretsch or a Guild?
Well, that's a tough question. I don't sell as many of those as I sell Gibsons and Fenders. Boy, that is a tough question. I think from a nostalgia point, I would say Gretsch, because there's more Gretsch players out there than there were Guild players. Guild makes a fantastic guitar, and I never really appreciated it because when I grew up, we didn't have a Guild dealer in Omaha. And so we did have a lot of Gretches, and so I'd have to go with Gretsch.
There you go. You've got some old Japanese guitars currently for sale. Would you prefer a lawsuit Japanese guitar or a 70s USA built guitar?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Good question.
From a price point, Japanese.
There you go.
However, I'll tell you what, I've got a finder down in Georgia that sends me guitars 5 at a time. He's got a fantastic collection, and he's continuing to improve his stable of guitars. So I get his ones that he's decided he wasn't going to keep, and I have got a whole new appreciation for those lawsuit guitars. I mean, there's some fantastic guitars.
Yeah.
And I know there's a bunch of people out there that are looking specifically for them, and I've discovered them through this as well. But I didn't play them growing up, so this was something new. A new skill set of mine was finding out more about these 70s Japanese guitars, and they are fantastic. I have to say, those Maxon pickups and Super 70s, they are very, very nice.
Absolutely. Going back to some of your old, Harmony and Silvertone interest, would you prefer a gold foil pickup or a speed bump?
Again, they both have their own characteristics. The speed bumps, if you're going to play blues, there's nothing dirtier and grimier and greasier than an old K speed bump. Those things are they are fat and ugly and cool. However, the gold foils and silver foils that DeArmond made are just a whole different animal. Those things are extremely powerful, and you can do a lot with them. I think the DeArmond gold foils and silver foils are more versatile than the speed bumps, but they're totally different. And it would just depend upon what you're going to do. So.
Understood. 2 more. So would you choose a Fender amp or a Marshall amp if you had to choose one?
Fender.
There you go.
Only because I just haven't had Marshalls over the years. I don't know them. I know they're cool, but and I play through some, but they're not for me. I'm a Fender guy.
There you go. And finally, are you a coffee man or a tea man?
Well, I'm really not very definite in a lot of these answers because I do both. I have 1 cup of tea in the morning, but then I drink coffee the rest of the day. So there you go.
There you go.
I'm trying to be I'm a well-rounded guitar player. How's that?
There you go. And that's the way we should all be, right?
Thank you again. This was great. We really, really, really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Send me a link so I know what I said out there, would you?
Yeah, of course. No problem.
Absolutely. And we may be in touch, soon about some of your inventory there, Mike. You've got some cool stuff on there. So.
You do.
Anytime I can help, guys, I'm happy to. Thank you for asking me. It's a great honor for you to ask to interview me. I appreciate it very much.
The honor is all ours, man. I promise you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thanks.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Thank
Bye.
you.